The discovery of arsenic contamination was noted in a study by the Department of Land and Water Conservation into the impact of mining at Tomago. Results show a level of arsenic in the groundwater limited to the mine site. However, there is speculation that lowering the water table by pumping bores located on coastal sands may also result in the release of the chemical.
We're talking primarily in this area about those areas where there are private spear points, private bores which pump underground water, which is used by people for drinking purposes.
Hunter Water has moved to reassure its consumers there is no cause for alarm. While the Tomago sandbed site provides 20% of the corporation's supply, all the water is treated.
Well, Hunter Water already has a system where we monitor very closely all the water we harvest, and it's fully treated at the Grahamstown Treatment Works, so it hasn't affected our direct supplies to customers at all.
The biggest concern is for residents who drink untreated bore water pumped from sandbeds. The Department of Land and Water Conservation has letter dropped about 800 houses between Williamtown and Nelson Bay. It's urging people who use bores to contact the department. Samples will now be taken to determine the level of arsenic present. The finding has angered residents who say they have been drinking bore water for years but will now get it tested.
Been never warned about a problem in using that, and to find out an hour ago that we could be subject to arsenic poisoning is a really scary thing.
It was all Harleys and hot rods at Maitland as thousands flocked to the Bike and Hot Rod Show hosted by the Gladiators Motorcycle Club. While these bikes look impressive, it's the ones on show that inspire the most interest, from pristine vintage machines to the gleaming customs. Proceeds from the show will be donated to the Children's Ward at the Maitland Hospital.
Residents were ordered out of their homes at about 2 o'clock. While natural gas is not poisonous, there were fears it could ignite.
Had a leak on the natural gas pipeline that supplies Morisset Hospital. The telecom linesmen were laying telecom cables and they accidentally hit the gas main.
Local police and fire officers cordoned off the area while gas officials moved in to repair the damaged line. Gas sprayed into the air for an hour before workers managed to clamp the leak. Residents were later allowed back into their homes and the gas supply to Morisset Hospital was restored a short time ago. Amanda Bolger, NBN News.
Two to one an equal favourite, 2-1 equal favourite and 5-2. In Melbourne it was the Duke of Norfolk Stakes at Flemington. Nine to 1, 11-2 and 20-1. The unplaced favourite at 3-1, King of Saxony. At Broadmeadow in Newcastle, the 6 was the State Health Credit Union handicap. $7.50 and $1.80, $1.90 and $1.50, and the trifecta $172 neat.
Premier Bob Carr announced the boost today as part of a statewide expansion of national parks.
The new national parks we're announcing today are equivalent in size to the whole of the ACT. This is a massive gain for the environment in this state.
The decision has been welcomed by member for Port Stephens Bob Martin, who says ecotourism is a major focus for the area and a significant national park will attract more Australian and international visitors. The government will draft a management plan so the public can have its say about how the park is developed.
I want to emphasise, especially for rural New South Wales, that there was a significant boost in national parks funding this year, $26 million extra, and that means that these parks are going to be properly serviced.
Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Donned one of their breathing lines, just went into the water and managed to find the entrance.
Warning bells were sounded after a study into the effects of sand mining at Tomago showed that disturbing underground soil increases the level of arsenic. But Tony Burgeon from the Department of Land and Water Conservation has been quick to rule out any link between mining and arsenic levels in water coming from privately sunk bores. It's these bores which don't benefit from the treatment process used by Hunter Water that could present a danger.
Whilst we had no hard evidence that there was elevated arsenic levels arising from the pumping down of bore fields or private bores, we had a hypothesis or a suggestion, I suppose, in the report that this could occur.
Over the weekend, more than 800 houses were letter dropped, alerting people of the possible danger and advising them to use alternative drinking water until they got their water checked. 42 sites have been tested so far, with laboratory scientists working overtime to get results. Out of all the samples, only one has exceeded the recommended arsenic level.
In general terms, the sample is big enough to suggest that we can be reassured that we haven't got a problem on our hands. But nevertheless, we need to get back to the individuals drinking water and do individual tests for them because, you know, they're people, they're individuals and they're entitled to get some results and be reassured by them.
Bore water users are encouraged to contact the department on the hotline number 294346. Meanwhile, Hunter Water users are being reassured their water is safe, even though some of it also comes from bores at Tomago. 100% of the corporation's supply is treated before being distributed. Amanda Bolger, NBN News.
The Premier's first stop was to officially open the $2.5 million extensions to Toronto Workers' Club. The improved facilities benefit members and many community groups who use the building, including this Stroke Recovery Association. After meeting with police at Toronto, the Premier moved into Labor's heartland, inspecting the rebuilding of Newcastle's earthquake-damaged Anglican Cathedral. On the steps, he reflected on his first year in office as State Premier.
I think the biggest achievement is delivering on health for people, rebuilding the hospital system, 8% increase in the hospital budget.
However, However, Liberal member for Maitland, Peter Blackmore, says the Premier broke his government's election promise to allocate funding in the last budget for an infant school at Ashtonfield. Mr Blackmore also says no funding has been allocated to reopen Wallsend Hospital for day surgery as promised by the Carr government.
We've made commitments. We've got 4 years, a 4-year term. I mean, we didn't set a time limit.
So does that mean that we might see it reopened?
Well, we'll talk about that down the track.
Well,
okay, we'll see you later.
Hold on,
okay.
we've just got to, can I ask you what your... Before leaving Labor's stronghold, some union business. Mr Carr officially opened the Health and Research Employees Association's new office in Charlestown. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Life isn't all gliding around and sucking on flowers for this little fellow. He's one of 5 squirrel gliders getting lumbered with a fashion accessory he thinks just isn't his style. A researcher from the University of Newcastle is fitting the gliders with radio transmitters so they can be tracked once returned to the bush. Till now, once the injured animals have been rehabilitated and released, no one has known what happens to them.
Typically there's no follow-up work to see whether they do establish or whether they just disappear. You don't know. Some of the work with other possums have found that they get up to 98% mortality.
The animals will be taken to a top-secret location at Lake Macquarie and set up in their own home, up a tree, in a crate. They'll then be spied on using their bug necklaces, so researchers know everything from where they dine out to who they're sleeping with. But while they may look cute and cuddly, these little gliders are no pushover, and they didn't take too kindly to being manhandled.
They will bite you and scratch you, of course, but they're quite placid to handle compared to a sugar glider who will eat your arm off.
Laura Saperstein, NBN News.
The murky waters at Walker Waterworks just outside Maitland may soon be about to have some unexpected wildlife. A South African businessman is investigating a plan to bring in thousands of crocs into the 20-hectare lake, building a giant fence around the water's edge. Understandably, not everyone is big on the idea.
There are a few people who are a little bit concerned about crocodiles being out here, and because it's a very popular place at weekends and a lot of children get out here.
The waterworks was set up more than 100 years ago as Newcastle's water source, but for the last 70 years or so it's been left for picnickers and tourists. While it's yet to go before council, it's expected a crocodile farm could boost visitor numbers and create a new industry along the way.
They're looking at selling the products from crocodiles for meat for eating purposes, and the skins for shoes, handbags and wallets and that type of thing.
And there'll definitely be no swimming from here on.
The waves were small and it wasn't long before some big names began to fall in round one of the Mark Richards Pro. Woolgoolga's Sam Carrier struggled in the tiny conditions, as did Newcastle's former World Junior champ Chad Edser. There were no such problems for WA's rising star Taj Burrow.
You got to pick the right ones. There's a lot of closeouts, so you got to get those peaky ones that sort of run down the beach for a little while. So yeah, they're the ones to get.
Newcastle's Nick Wood took another step along the comeback trail in round two, showing the sort of devastating form that took him to third place in the recent Margaret River Classic.
I'd like to carry it through into this event. So I lived here most of my life, I only just moved up to Sunshine Coast, so it'd be good to come back in town and take it out.
Former world number 4 Shane Herring had his comeback stalled in round two, while Byron Bay powerhouse Brendan Margison had a rare moment of competitive success, progressing to round 3 along with radical U-minor surfer Dave Nielsen. Competition continues tomorrow. Bruce McKenzie, NBN News.
The load includes, besides some food acid, it also includes 1.7 tonnes of pool chlorine. And of course, being near the water here, if that got into the water, it would be poisonous.
Once it's fully operational, it'll be one of the biggest companies in Maitland.
They look like ordinary teenagers, but these two Hunter Valley Grammar students are about to take on the world. The world's best under 20-year-old athletes, that is, at the World Juniors in Sydney in August. Mindy Slomka is the quickest 15-year-old in Australia, but she has plans beyond August.
Firstly, to get the 2000 Olympics, but just to be the fastest white woman, I think.
Mindy has been invited to the Atlanta Olympics to get a feel of top-class competition. The call coming through from a selector last night.
Told me that I was in it and I was just so excited. Like, I'm in the relay squad, but that's good enough for me anyway.
Yeah. Also quick off the mark is 17-year-old Andrew Laverick. He's the fastest in Australia for his age in the 400-metre hurdles. Like Mindy, he sees the World Juniors as a step to the Sydney Olympics. He puts in 6 days a week in training, and Andrew says it's all worth it.
Coming across the line and you feel like you've put everything into it and you've got a good time out of it. Yeah, just satisfaction that your training's paying off. It's really good.
Peter Ryan, NBN News. Hey, fellas, anything coming out of the meeting?
Not a great deal.
Nah? Come out of it, fellas? Not really, no. Not really? Oh, with the, Brad, any word on what's happening with your future?
No, mate, probably got about a week to make up our minds. So.
The tip is you're going to the Knights. Would you like to go back to the Knights?
Well, we've got about a week to make up our minds, so...
They've been the two dominant teams all year. Now it's crunch time. A lot will depend on this man. The experience of Waratah Mayfield's Greg Arms a vital factor in what is expected to be a hard-fought final. But he doesn't underestimate the strong Walls End outfit as he tries to break his finals hoodoo. In soccer, the Breakers continue their bitter war with the Melbourne Knights in just under an hour at the Breakers Stadium. The club hopes the return of Jason Bennett and Peter Ritchie will inspire a home ground upset. Sweet revenge after a spiteful first-round loss. The Adamstown Rosebuds will travel to Sydney for their State Super League clash against Rockdale. The team keen to get back in the winner's circle after last week's loss to the Central Coast saw the team slip from 1st to 5th. In Union, the Wildfires will play Penrith at Penrith in the Challenge Plate after bowing out of the Challenge Cup in last week's loss to Norths. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
The community of Curry has been stunned by the decision.
And I'm dumbfounded. Until you told me, I didn't think there was a snowball chance in hell of it going ahead.
The plan to build an aluminium recycling factory or dross plant in the region has been fought since it was suggested 5 years ago. Protesters arguing it was a health risk. Planned for Maitland initially, the company Alumino Australia then moved it to this site at Curry. It's been knocked back and approved by local councils and in and out of the Land and Environment Court. The company today said it was pleased the long process is over, saying the plant would create 50 new jobs and put $2 million a year into the local economy. Against the tide of community feeling, the local Chamber of Commerce welcomes the new business.
It spells a very good future for Curry. I think after all the hype dies down, that people realise that there's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
A public meeting is planned to try and fight the Land and Environment Court approval. It seems it may not be over yet.
They'll battle through this one. We've battled through strikes, depressions and wars, so we won't be letting this one die.
The men, one armed with a sawn-off rifle, the other with a large knife, burst into the bank at around 10 to 3 this afternoon. Screams from within the bank alerted passers-by and nearby retailers to the hold-up. Dave Trudinick of the hardware store next door was the first to investigate.
I darted out the front door and went in there, opened the door up and noticed that the customers in the bank were all laying on the floor. So I shut the door and got out quick and phoned the police and the ambulance.
I seen the first one come out with the gun, and then I waited to the other, and he got to the door and he pulled his balaclava off. I chased him down to there, and the chap in the bank called out, "Don't go any further, don't go any further."
No one was seriously injured in the hold-up. Police believe only a small amount of money was taken from the bank's tills. The robbers fled the scene in a red Laser. It was located a short time later, engine still running, in a car park at a nearby McDonald's. Both men were wearing black balaclavas, one described as being tall with a solid build, the other slight and short. Police would also like to speak to a woman who was parked next to the pair in the car park before the robbery. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.
Both teams are trying to post their first win of the season. Quick Hands giving Maitland the early lead, courtesy of Jeff Cook. A break by Jason Miskoskas set up another, Derek Vale touching down for the 4-pointer. Waratah Mayfield went wide to get back into the game, the ball going through 6 pairs of hands before Michael Martin scored in the corner. Maitland returned fire minutes later, before the Tars scored right on the bell to trail by a converted try at the break. The Pumpkin Pickers kicked away in the second half, going on to win 36-16. A near boil over in the Sidecar Masters at the Newcastle Motordrome last night, when Australian champion Darren Treloar looked like he wouldn't fill a place. But the race had to be restarted after a passenger of one of the sidecars fell off and broke his leg. But even then, it was far from plain sailing for Treloar in the handicap event, leaving it to the last lap to overhaul the leader, Peter Selk.
Newcastle's Greek community gathered at St Demetrius Church in Hamilton for religious and wreath-laying ceremonies. They paid tribute to those who lost their lives fighting for Greece's independence from the Ottoman Empire.
New Greece was born. It was under Turkish rule 400 years, and in the 25th of March 1821, the nation was reborn.
The Lord Mayor and local MPs took part in today's ceremony. Celebrations have been held all weekend,
which will commemorate those heroes that they gave their lives for our freedom.